All right, a good Monday evening to everybody. I'm Matt Gross with the latest update on what is now Major Hurricane Florence, moving into now what is the Western Atlantic. You see Hispaniola and Puerto Rico down here at the bottom of the screen, Bermuda right up here, and here is Florence ready to go right in between them. The storm has intensified pretty rapidly over the last 24 hours. Pressure was found as low as 939 millibars, which makes this a bona fide Category 4 hurricane that's capable of doing extreme damage if it were to hit anything at this intensity, and it is likely to hit the southeast coast at least this intensity. I do believe that we're starting to see now the intensity level off for a while, as there is some disorganization in the inner core of the system. You can see here at the very end of the loop how it doesn't look completely circular. You see this western side here does look a little bit ragged, and also the core of the strongest winds is still pretty small at this point. You would expect as this thing starts gaining more latitude, that core is going to expand. We have not quite seen it yet. So while it's come a very long way in a very short time, it hasn't really gone all the way into how strong this can possibly be. This can go through an eye wall replacement cycle, can clean up the core a little bit and still get stronger. And there is a lot of warm water with low shear environment ahead of it. If we look at the latest recon that's going through, it showed up 942 millibars at the last pass. This plane's going to come through here again. Maybe we'll find something a little bit lower, but we did see it as low as 939 at one point, so this is probably a sign, again, that the intensity is leveling off. Not that it needs to get much stronger for this to become an extremely serious situation along the southeast coast. If we look at the latest map from the National Hurricane Center, here it is, and there's a few very, very important things to know. Number one is that they have this coming in somewhere basically between Cape Hatteras and a little bit south of Myrtle Beach here, South Carolina. So, for the eye wall of the storm, you see that places like Hilton Head down here in Savannah, Georgia, have been taken out of the cone. It doesn't mean it's impossible for a hit down there, but I think that we are starting to align our target here a little bit further to the north. I personally like a track a little bit more on the northern and eastern end of this envelope here, somewhere between maybe Wilmington, North Carolina, and Cape Hatteras would be my best guess right now. But if you notice, we are not expecting a landfall until Thursday, so that's still 72 hours away, and there will absolutely be small mesoscale features along the Carolina coast that will make a difference that we cannot see yet, and we will not know until we get a little bit close to the event, that could shift this a little bit further northeast or southwest. And those are the things you're going to really watch out for, because that will determine who takes the brunt of the right front eye wall. The other thing to notice here is the difference in speed. Florence by Wednesday afternoon is expected to be somewhere over here in this area at about 72, 73 west as she crosses 30 degrees north latitude. And then as she's under the influence of this big ridge, she will accelerate. Look at the ground she covers here between 2 p.m. on Wednesday and 2 p.m. on Thursday. This is going to be pretty much the fastest she's going to have moved, maybe close to 20 miles an hour in forward speed as she approaches the Carolina coast. And the reason this is very, very important is that if you're going to see the hurricane whale here on Wednesday, you're going to think maybe you got some time on Thursday to prepare if you're in this area. Do not believe that. Your preparations should be done by the end of the day on Wednesday, because this is going to be accelerating towards the coast extremely quickly, and which basically means on Monday night now you got Tuesday and you got Wednesday to get out, to get all your personal belongings where they need to be. Make sure that loved ones who may not be able to move have some way of getting out, to have a plan for your pets to move them in, whatever the case may be. You should have this done by Wednesday night, because, well, it's possible the storm moves a little bit slower. I would not want to bet on it, because once these conditions come in, time's up. They will only get worse once the edge of the storm starts reaching. And remember, this is for the eye of the storm. The earliest onset of the winds could come before. So even if it's 2 p.m., this does not mean that this does not mean it's a nice day on the Carolina coast if the eye is here. The core of bad weather will have already be impacting much of the Carolina coast at this point. So that's a very, very key point. No, the other thing to note is, as fast as it moves here, the opposite happens basically as soon as it gets to the coast, and this is becoming the difficult part of the forecast, is how much is this going to slow down as it comes inland, and that's really going to be the differentiating factor here between whether or not we see a very, very bad situation or a historically bad situation in terms of inland flooding. It's going to be bad either way, but the question is, are we going to see like a 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 year flood, which is absolutely possible for portions of North Carolina and Virginia. We will get more into that in a moment. Checking out on the intensity here, if you notice, this is the latest, the 5 p.m. advisory of the National Hurricane Center, and they have this system, right, which is right now at 140 miles an hour. You see that here, and they have it peaking at 155 miles an hour tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. That is, if in these 5-mile-an-hour blocks, essentially only one notch away from a Category 5. If it goes 5 miles an hour higher than this to 160, it would be a Category 5. So the National Hurricane Center, while not predicting a Category 5, is still expecting this to get about as strong as you can possibly get without actually declaring that they think it's going to become a Category 5 in the next 24 to 36 hours. So they do expect this current phase of leveling off of intensity to only be temporary. Maybe overnight, maybe tomorrow morning, but tomorrow night, maybe after it's got 24 hours to go through an eye wall replacement cycle and go through, mixing some whatever dry air is left over in the system, or with the system being a little lopsided in the core, it will have time. It still has, like I said, 72 hours, or at least 60 to 66 hours where the whole circulation is going to be over water, and that water, again, is very, very warm, upwards to 85 degrees as you get closer to the Carolina coast. So it is going to have that opportunity if it goes for it. We can also look at a colorized loop here and show you this. Again, here at the end, you see that it looked a little bit more organized at the beginning of the loop here, where you had a better outflow, better core here, and then see the end of the loop here. This the west side starts to look a little bit ragged, so maybe the wind will come down to 130. But again, it's not really going to matter because it's probably going to go through another period of strengthening tomorrow night or Wednesday before it comes in. So it really, this is still an extremely dangerous storm. So even if it's starting to look a little bit more ragged, I would not take that as good news in the long run at all right now. The other thing to notice here, it has almost reached 26 degrees north. You can see that over here on the left side of the screen here, and that's important. If it can get there, it might be close to 62 west, because remember, we go back to that other chart, you can kind of start plotting along here. So the National Hurricane Center believes it's going to hit 26 degrees north in 12 hours, and the 5 p.m. advisories, that would be 5 a.m. at 26 degrees north. So and that would also be, they also expect it 26 degrees north at 63 degrees west. If we go back here and look at a plot, this is the 62 degrees west line, so they have it getting to the 26 degree north line somewhere in here. So it's possible if the storm wobbles any more to the north, it would be on the northern end of the envelope, and that's something to watch if you want to see if it's going to go to one end of the track or the other. If it gets a little bit further north over the next overnight, if it wobbles north again, they may have to bump the track up a little bit to the north. That's something you can kind of watch with this image and this one here. You can kind of plot along, look at these numbers to see if it's going closer to you or further away, depending on if you're in South Carolina or Virginia or Cape Hatteras or Wilmington or wherever you happen to be watching this from, if you're rooting for it to go in one direction or the other. Here's a look at the models. GFS model, very, very quickly here, runs it forward. Here's the big old ridge in the northwest Atlantic that we've been watching for days. As it pumps along and pushes the system to the west, system intensifies. Now the GFS actually still keeps this just offshore, which is on the extreme eastern end of the envelope. And if you're going to know why, I'm going to show you why here. Watch this ridge here, the 594 thickness and the 591 thickness. As the storm approaches the coast, watch what happens. The 594 thickness will disappear completely. Storm is still not inland. We're now on Thursday. It says OZ Friday. This is now basically Thursday night. And go forward. Now the 591 thickness is gone to the west of the system. The nearest line is 588. The 591 is actually now to the west of the system, which is kind of weird. So in basically 12 hours, you have this thick, you have the ridges here. Now it's gone. And once that ridge is gone, the steering currents are gone. There's only two things that can steer the hurricane, a ridge and a trough. Well, our ridge is gone, the one that we had over here, and any trough-like features here, which we depicted by something like this in the blue, are absolutely nowhere to be found anywhere in the eastern part of the United States, really anywhere in the eastern two-thirds of the United States, or in the northwest Atlantic. So that means that if this ridge decays, like the GFS is showing, and like several other models have been showing, this system is not going to move very much for several days, and this is where the potentially historic inland flooding problems can occur after this storm makes landfall. This could be a two-part event. You could have a extremely devastating wind and surge event from a Category 4 hurricane or somewhere thereabouts coming into North Carolina. There's only been 3 Category 4 hurricanes in the last 100 years to hit those states. Hugo, Gracie, both in South Carolina, and Hazel in North Carolina. That's it. So if this comes in as a Category 4, you're talking about one of the 4 strongest storms to ever hit the Carolinas in the last 100 years, just in wind and surge-wise, and this could be worse than those systems if the rain comes to deliver as well. Another point here is, let's look at the European models to show the difference, which drives the storm a little bit further. Notice, here's our big ridge. Notice the 594 heights. And notice the ridge is still there. Look, the system, Euro is a little bit further south. It's making landfall near Wilmington, North Carolina. Why is it making landfall there? Look, even as the storm comes inland, the 594 thickness is still existent. So the ridge is still directing it to the north and to the west. It does decay the ridge after it goes inland, but it's able to get pretty far inland before it stops. The other thing the Euro does in the long term, if I'm going to run this forward, which is interesting, it starts bringing it up into West Virginia and along the Ohio River. Now, I'm not sure how the Euro is doing this, because there's really not a lot of steering corners. If you look at it around, it's just pretty much enveloped by this ridge. In the previous runs, it had it getting stuck over Roanoke or between Roanoke and Richmond, or one run down just a little bit north of Charlotte. That kind of made a little bit more sense to me, because I don't see any major steering currents here to push this thing along. But nevertheless, by Sunday afternoon and Sunday night, it does get the storm over into the Ohio Valley, which this would be a much better solution for North Carolina and Virginia. Not a great solution, but a much better solution. And, and I'll show you those rainfall maps here, and I can show them to you. Now, this is the most recent one right here. So this is still major borderline catastrophic flooding anywhere you see the purple here, all the way up into Roanoke, and we got right in Raleigh. So this is still a very bad event. But because the storm moved it into the Ohio Valley, this did not continue for another 36 hours, which it absolutely could have if the storm does not move up into those areas. And I can show you, this was last night's Euro run. This was Sunday afternoon's Euro run. Right here with all this rain, so you have a fatter, some places up to 2 feet of rain. This was the run before that, almost the entire state of Virginia. I think I showed this in the previous video, and this was the run before that. So this latest little trend on the Euro today, we're going to have to watch tonight to see what it does. If it drives it inland again, might be a bit of good news for the inland area. It is still a horrible situation, and you need to be very prepared for this severe inland flooding if you live in these areas, but it might not be quite as bad as it was looking 24 hours ago. But again, the exact location is still going to evolve. Remember, this flooding is going to occur Friday, Saturday, Sunday after the storm comes inland. So when you think it's over, it's come inland, no. If you're inland, it's actually just beginning. And this is where there is still a potential for many trees to come down, even tropical storm force winds with this sort of water coming down, rivers overflowing, water careening down the sides of hills and mountains when it gets in these elevated areas. This is a very serious situation, and only the storm moving into the Ohio Valley would prevent this from being possibly the worst flood of all time in the Shenandoah Valley or back here in the western North Carolina. So that is something that you're going to have to watch very closely over the next few days. Finally, there's just one other point I want to make here with the GFS model. There is a very prolonged period of onshore flow. Notice the high pressure here, 1024 millibars. It's going, or it's not a very strong high, but it's still going to push things clockwise. That kind of joins up with this counterclockwise. So all the flow is into the ocean. So there's going to be many high tide cycles of water being pushed towards this opening here at the mouth of Chesapeake Bay. And that is not, so even if you're not near the center of circulation, you can get, if this stalls off the coast, again, this is the GFS scenario, you will get severe beach erosion and damage to structures on this part of the coast. So that's pretty much the main point here. Finally, if you're watching this up in Pennsylvania and Maryland and New Jersey, Right now, I think you will escape the worst of it. I think it's going to stall a little bit further south of Baltimore. This does not mean you're off the hook. I think you have to continue to watch this, but right now, I think the worst of it is DC South in terms of the flooding. There's still potential to take the GFS track to the east and so far, but